morning. I've already been in a number of phone calls and actually a great prayer meeting where we were joined by one of our missionaries. His name is Chris Pedro. He's in Mexico, and so it was great to be able to briefly connect with him. And through connecting with him, brought some things to my mind. Just reminded me of some things that I had wanted to talk about, and this seems like the perfect time, based on some things that are going on around us right now. We all have heard of a young man well, he's not a young man. He was an adult male. I think he was in his 40s. George Floyd, that was murdered in Minneapolis. Now we don't know that. I'm not going to speak to the situation, to the guilt, to any of that, because I'm not an investigator, and I'm not going to speak to those things because I don't know the facts there, right? Uh, I will say that it very much I would classify that as murder, as there was no threat to continue pressing on that man's neck. Um, but it makes it spurs thoughts, it spurs ideas in people's minds. It allows us to see some pieces of what's in our hearts. There's a passage that was coming to my mind. It's in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12. It says, "Hatred stirs up conflict. Hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers all wrong." Hatred stirs up conflict, but love covers all wrong. There was hatred that created some conflict. That conflict was seen in the life of. So obviously, the big story of the day is the looting and. Come on now, sorry about that. It was seen in the life taking of Mr. Floyd, and there was not a lot of love that we've seen over the last 24 hours. Up in Minneapolis, there are rioters, there are looters. They have burned. The last report that I read um, said that there was something like 50 buildings that had been either burned to the ground or in some way damaged severely. Uh, One of our missionaries, Chris Pedro, actually has some family that lives in the area and has been threatened that his neighborhood is going to be burned down, and calls for justice, and calls for fairness, and calls for whatever. So the question I have is really, what does love do? Well, based on the passage in Proverbs, love covers offenses. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12 actually says that hatred stirs up conflict. We see the hatred because we see the conflict, but love covers all offenses. I want to point you to a picture, and we see this from time to time. 2 years ago, there was a man by the name, young man, he was 14 at the time, uh, named Javon Coulter. He was 14. This was in 2015. So this has been a few years ago. He was 14, meaning that he's 20, 19 or 20 now. Javon Coulter was charged with another young man in the murder of Solomon Ahmad Abdul Mutakalim. I may have mispronounced his name, and if I did, I'm very sorry to his family. But he was charged in that murder. Well, at the court case, at the hearing, this young man's mother showed up. The man who had been murdered, he was 39 when he was murdered. His mother came and approached and spoke with Javon, and her response was to say that she forgives him for what he did. Now we see that in other cases as well. A quick internet search will see over murder of their children. We see it happening. We know that last year there was a case, and I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but in this case, the family uh, forgave the young man that was involved in the crime, and the judge even came down and shared God's love with him and shared a Bible with this young man. Hatred stirs up conflict. Love covers all offenses. You see, it doesn't say that love covers some offenses. It says that love covers all offenses. It doesn't say love covers the offenses unless I'm upset. It says love covers all offenses. Look, I think we as a body of believers need to be praying for our communities. We need to be lifting up our communities, not tearing them down, not getting in fights with people over silly things such as wearing a mask or not wearing a mask. I've seen videos of hatred. Well, as a body of believers, it is our job to call people to love and good deeds, to encourage each other to love and good deeds. Love covers all offenses, but hatred stirs up conflict. So today, as you're going about your day, I want to encourage you not to stir up conflict. If you are stirring up conflict, then you have to respond to the question of what is in your heart. What is it that you are trying to prove? What is it that you are trying to control? And ultimately, what is it that you are worshiping? Because when we are worshiping our Creator, when we are worshiping our loving God, then we love and we cover offenses. It doesn't mean that there's no justice. It doesn't mean that hatred goes unchecked. That's not what it means. Because there are consequences to our actions. As believers, when we sin, there are consequences to those actions. As a believer, if I sin, and if my sin is a crime, I have to pay the penalty for that crime. That's just the way it works. There are consequences to my actions. But there's still love. So I want to encourage you today to love your neighbor. Don't love yourself. Love God first, right? We've talked about this. Love God first. He is number one. He is over everything. Love God first, and then love your neighbor. Love God, love others. Don't go to work today and think I'm going to prove myself right. Don't go to work today and think I've got something that I need to prove that I'm better than other people, or I'm gonna get that so and so because they've been mean to me all this time. Don't go to work, don't go to school, don't go to wherever it is you're going with that attitude. Instead, go with the attitude of love that covers all offenses. Because what happens on a large scale when hatred goes unchecked is what's happening in Minneapolis right now. I want to encourage believers in Minneapolis. We have a sister church, Bethlehem Baptist Church, is in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and I want to encourage the believers in Minneapolis to hold fast to the faith, to be able to focus on Scripture and be able to focus on God and be able to love despite what may or may not happen to your personal belonging. Allow the love of Christ to shine in your neighborhood today. But that goes for us here in Ogle County too. Allow the love of Christ to shine in your neighborhood today. That's all I've got. It's something that's on my heart. I'm heartbroken over what has taken place up there by these men, and I am equally heartbroken as to what is continuing to take place even now. As innocent people that have nothing to do with the situation, are being attacked. They're having their lives destroyed because hatred stirs up conflict. Father God, I just ask this morning that you will allow your love to be the love that comes out of us, even in the midst of hatred all around us. God, I just ask that while hatred stirs up the conflict of our neighbors, of our brothers and sisters potentially, that you will allow your love and your grace to be revealed in such a way that some will come to a saving knowledge of you. God, if it takes these hard times, these hard situations right now, then God, I want to ask that you will use these things in powerful ways. And if it takes losing a business or losing a loved one in order to bring us to you, God, we ask for your grace. We ask for your compassion. We ask for you in our lives. God, shine through our lives as we go through our day today. In your name we pray. Amen. Hey, I'm saddened again by what's going on, but I am encouraged because I know that there are believers out there that are being encouraging, and I want to ask that you be one of those believers. Until then, I will see you all on Sunday. Bye bye.